Hey guys, it's Ted Bogert. Welcome back to the Ted Show. Been trying to get this young man on the show for quite a while. This is Rick Melero. He's with his Capital Group. We're going to talk about investing with purpose. You all are always asking me about investments. There seems to be this big run on that. People are super excited to be educated. I think people have heard about it. Now they want to get into it. But especially since we've had a little bit of shift in the market. And so it's always good to have that knowledge from somebody who's actually knowledgeable. So welcome, Rick Melero. How are you today?
I am doing good, Ted. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here with you.
It's an honor to have you on the show. We've been trying for a while. You guys, his Capital Group, which we'll share in a bit, very creative. You guys give back. You're very kingdom oriented, for lack of a better term. I'm sure you'll get into that. So before we get into investing, let's learn a little bit of your history, kind of your point A to point B, if you don't mind, share it with the audience.
Sure. Obviously, it's been a good while now. Obviously, there's like that A to B has been 20 something years.
Wow.
But briefly to kind of walk you through it, I actually started initially. Let's just say that I was not really a mature teenage kid, and I brought a lot of hell at my house. I got kicked out at 17. And so that really forced me during, the age of 17 to then have to fend for myself and learn what it was like to survive and live in the real world. Now, luckily, years later, my mom and we have a great relationship now. But that season really, I believe, built this core tenacity and consistency within me because it was either do or die. And so, for the longest time, I ended up working at some jobs and I always excelled and I did everything I could. And ultimately, that led me to one day deciding that I wanted to have purpose. So here I am building a career, but I'm not fulfilled. And so then I went the complete opposite of the direction. I've always been an extremist. So when I finally, met and I had an experience with God, long story on that, but it was such a powerful experience. And it was like a radical shift. And being the very young, immature man and young, immature Christian, I just jumped into ministry. I started donating my time. And don't get me wrong, the feeling was great. People were being impacted. And for about almost 2 years, I served as a youth pastor. But while I learned in the youth ministry that I was really not only, had some talents that really helped touch lives. And I went on the mission field and I kind of fell in love with making a difference in people's lives. I also learned that in that industry, unless if you're working in a big church, there's usually not a big budget. And so, I got to a place where I was so broke, I couldn't pay attention. That was my life, right? So I kind of look back and I realized also that because I was so full throttle on the ministry, I allowed the work of the ministry to hinder the work within me. And that's when I made a decision that, I need to reset. I need to regroup. I need to start focusing on my root system here because there's a problem here. And so it was during that journey, believe it or not, where I actually was praying and seeking God for direction. And I started trying to connect some dots of what I would do to survive. And I fell into real estate. I felt like I was being led to that. And I'm not going to say it was easy. I'm not going to say that it was something that was simple and happened. But the reality is I was never give up. I was very consistent at pushing forward. And even when I tried to get a job in the industry initially, because I couldn't pay for a mentor, what I ended up doing is they wouldn't give me a job because I didn't have the experience. And so what I ended up doing is working for free for 6 months during the day. And I'd work at night to survive during the evenings. And it was that 6-month period that really catapulted me and taught me the ropes so that I can go on my own and build this business that now 20 years later is thriving. And we're just honored to be in the industry.
You look very young to have been in it for 20 years, my friend. It's either I think it's either genetics or great lighting or a combination of all of that. The real estate world is so interesting because I feel like people do fall into it. So many times people share their story and their journey, and it was something they were led to do. We're both men of faith, so we understand what that means. For a lot of people, they're like, wow, fate just got me here. And I think, though, that when a lot of people get the gift, they don't know what to do with it. So how did you know what part of real estate you wanted to be in? Because there's so many facets to it. How did you know what path you wanted to be in? Did you hone that along the way? Because you obviously don't go from being led to being in real estate to having his capital group. There's
Yeah.
sort of journey there. And I think a lot of people would love to hear that, because I think there are people on the cusp. People want to make a leap. They want to try to figure out what they want to do, but they just don't know what to do.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, just look at it from the perspective. When I started, I had zero money, zero experience. So when I went to work with this guy as an intern, in essence, I became his acquisition guy. And so I started learning how to source great opportunities. So the very first step for me was learning how to negotiate, how to find deals, and then bringing it to a guy with the money. So in essence, I was wholesaling. And so the very first stage of my business was, number one, learning on somebody else's capital investment, what it meant to buy a right property, and kind of getting to that stage. Now, when I did it and I realized how much money I could make with it and that I really wanted to level up, I went relentlessly after it. And I went from doing a couple deals a month to almost 30 properties a month. That was back in 2005, 6, and 7. And so we had built something great, but then I realized, wait a minute, the guy that's really making money is the guy that I'm selling the contracts to, right? And so I started diversifying. And so before you know it, I'm a flipper. I started buying a couple of rental properties. And I'll never forget this in a brief summary, because obviously of time that I want to respect here. I was actually speaking at an event. Somebody asked me to talk about what I did. I was pretty proud, and something interesting about how a lot of money sometimes really exposes some of your weaknesses. Mine was pride. And here I am speaking in front of almost 400 people in front of an audience. And long story short, at the very end, everybody's coming to me and they're all excited. I met another gentleman that was out of downtown Orlando, and almost was disinterested in me, which challenged me to say, well, who's this guy? Why? How am I not impressing this guy?
I love that.
And he basically said, oh, I know what you do. You just work for tips. And I mean, it just totally rocked my world. And I was almost, indignant. But the beautiful thing was, afterwards, the conversation transpired. And when I found out what he did, he showed me that in a much smaller scale, he was building an income producing portfolio. And so luckily for me, I listened to him, I worked with him, and I did a few deals with him. And I started building some small commercial real estate portfolios, and then the market crashed. And so had it not been for meeting this guy that literally knocked me on my feet and reminded me that, the glory is not for Rick, it's for his glory. And ultimately, we ended up buying income producing assets that, when the market tanked in 2009, held us through until we can reposition the company. And now fast forward, I mean, every time is leveling up. I believe in the philosophy of diversification and building a portfolio, not just being a flipper, not just being a landlord. And so we do a combination of things. So now we're at a point where we're a private lender. One of our arms does obviously development of new homes. We're even in Tulum, Mexico, developing some incredible properties that I'm going to be going in the next couple of days. So it's just been an amazing journey to really see how you learn from your mistakes and you build on that. And then ultimately you continue to expand and multiply your business endeavors.
Yes, I love that. I love the indignant part, because I think we've all been there, right?
Right.
You're like, well, wait, I'm the guy, I'm the dude, I'm the guy in the room that everybody knows. And yet there's always somebody who's got a different perspective. And so if you have, age, I think, allows me to look at that a little better than I did back 20, 30 years ago, where I thought I was the dude, man. I walked into a room and everybody wanted to get my knowledge. But isn't it wonderful to be in a room? God is so amazing to lead you to people who are supposed to be part of your purpose.
Yes.
And so let's talk about that, investing with purpose, because I think right now the market is, people don't listen to the news, everyone. The world is not crashing. I feel like there are still amazing opportunities out there. And investing seems to be at the top of everyone's mind. They just don't know how to do it. And I think that they haphazardly do it because they don't have the tools or the resources or the people to do it with. So let's talk about it. You chose the title, Investing with Purpose. What does that mean?
Absolutely. Well, I think one of the biggest things that I've learned in my career, and again, I can tell you of cases and cases of my failing forward moments. But what I have learned is that investing is all about setting yourself free so that you have financial freedom. That's really, if you think about it, that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to find a way that we stop working for dollars and we start allowing the dollars to work for us. Why? So that we can be free to do what we want. And so one of the things that I learned in this journey is that if you really want to integrate purpose with your specific strategy. A lot of people will say, look, like for example, we're dealing with this issue right now in Fort Myers. There's a lot of people with need. There's people in Ukraine that are dealing with war issues. I don't know if you saw what's going on in Pakistan. I mean, just insane. 46 million people displaced. There is need everywhere. And so what I learned is that with my heart, that's one of my desires, is to make a difference in the lives of people. But I can't give all of my money away. Otherwise, I can't make a difference. And so what we started developing was this philosophy that we say, look, first and foremost, what we want to do is take the money you're saving and use that as a seed. And you begin to plant it and invest it in a variety of strategies. Those seeds begin to grow and nurture and develop a tree that produces a fruit. From the fruit, then you start investing in making a difference in the lives of people. You start investing in your children, and you start passing on that gift. And so really that's the essence of what I talk about when I say investing with a purpose, is getting to the place where you stop literally just living for the next paycheck. And you start taking some of that savings, investing it in passive income. And then once that money starts working for you, now you develop the freedom to be able to do what you want, when you want, and to make a difference. And the reason why the difference is so important, Ted, and I think this is essential, is I made this mistake in 2012 when we started ramping back up, money's coming in, things are happening. And I allowed the work to distract me from the heart. And that is really important, because what happens is you're living for yourself and your purpose is only as big as you. And I can tell you, it doesn't matter what car you buy, what watch you have, it all gets old. And the only real way to infuse life into your business and into your culture and into your personal life is to really have a purpose much bigger than yourself. And finances empower you to grow that. And so that's really what it's all about, is investing so that you can also have purpose infused in your strategy.
So I love that. And that's my belief on anything, is to not make the focus me. And that's sort of what you're saying. There's
Yes.
a bigger purpose, a bigger focus, a bigger need. And as men of faith, we know that we're supposed to give the glory elsewhere and not bask in it. We need to continue to do our good work as we're supposed to do our good work. Let's talk some tips. Maybe somebody's out there watching and they go, all right, I love what Rick's saying. I've wanted to take a leap. What are some tips? What are some first steps? Something that you can leave them with where they go, okay, I can do that, or I understand that. Because I think a lot of times we read all the books, we hope by osmosis we get the knowledge. We want to be the expert because we've gone to every seminar known to man. And yet we are still left afraid to take that first step.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think the very first thing is understanding at least a core foundational anchor to what you do. And so the first thing I tell people is look at your money, whatever resource you have. You might have a lot, you might have a little bit that you start with. And obviously that's going to dictate what strategy you start with, like it did with me. But if you have some resources, what I always tell people is look at it this way. I call it the 40-40-20. 40% of all of your capital should be invested in what we call short-term appreciation gains. The reason why I start that with that first bucket is because it's hard to build passive cash flow until you have enough cash to invest passively, right? And so there's what comes first, the chicken or the egg. Yeah. So 40% of what we call active income are what I would call finding a distressed property at a good price that you can renovate and sell for a profit. In today's market, one of my favorite strategies, believe it or not, and I have a lot of those properties going on right now because obviously we've reached a different level now over the 20 years we've been doing it. But anyone can start with one. And that is buying an infill lot, negotiating with a good builder, building a house and selling it. The idea is that within a 12 to 18 month period, you've generated 20, 30, 50, $100,000. And then the key now for the next step is what you do with that next step. And that is, now that I've made a profit, then you start thinking about the other 40, which is cash flow. Because I don't care what anybody says, P&Ls and balance sheet and net worth statements, those are all pretty. But at the end of the day, cash flow covers a multitude of sin. It's the reality, right? It's the lifeblood of financial freedom. So you take that 50 grand and you say, how much do I need to live now in addition? But now let me take the rest and I'm going to invest it into something that produces cash flow. That's the key. And again, that could be for us is lending. We do a lot of whole notes. We own rental properties. We have some short-term rentals. We have some small commercial. I'm only listing all these because, again, there's a lot of options. And I have investors that come to me with 50 grand and buy a mortgage, and they're making an 8% return on that. So that is the key, is getting to that bucket to start building. And then lastly, once you got to the point where you have a decent cash flow stream and you have active money producing for you every 12, 18 months, then you can afford what I call the higher risk, high reward. That is an example of what I'm doing in Tulum, where we're building an Armani house. We're building a Porsche house by the water. It's fantastic, but obviously I'm in another country, so there's a higher level of risk. It took me a year to get comfortable, but if I did it right and it produces, my return could be 2-3 times the amount of the investment. And so that's kind of what I want to give people the concept of, is begin with active income, carve some of that profit, put it into cash flow, and once you have enough cash flow to cover your lifestyle, then start looking for the opportunities that might be a little bit more advantageous, but they inherently may have a little bit more risk, which is something we don't ever want to go past that 20%.
All of that makes sense to me. And I think what people need to do is find someone that they connect with, which obviously, if you're faith-based, I'm a big believer in working with people who stay true to that. It doesn't matter what experience you've had before. If you can find someone that you connect with, for me, it's always faith-based. I try to find people who have a similar thought process. It doesn't mean they're perfect human beings. It just means that at the end of the day, their intent is usually good and golden and pure. So I'm super excited to have you on here. I've been wanting to have you on for a long time. I think what you all do in the community is such a blessing. You give back a lot, which we didn't talk a ton about, but you do. And we just talked about how you're going down to Fort Myers Beach. I love to see people who are successful at what they do, pouring back into the community that has helped them be successful, the world that's helped them be successful. And so kudos to you guys for doing that. Before I ask you all of the ways people can reach you, I always like to ask a personal question. Sure. Rick, when I say the word hero to you, who's the first person that comes to mind?
For me, it's my grandmother.
Tell me why.
Yeah, my grandmother, I have a lot of people have asked me, like, when they say Jesus, what face do you see? And it's the same answer to me. It's my grandmother. And people say, how is that possible? Jesus was a man. And what I tell people is, my grandmother lived her life with such a conviction and purpose that she exudes the very principles of Jesus. So as far as I'm concerned, that woman lived out the gospel, and she loved me in spite of me. She was there for me, and she obviously held a standard and always called me to that standard. But I never felt judged. I always felt loved, even when I was being corrected. And so for me, I believe that it was the seeds that she planted in me that today are producing all of this fruit. And now my desire is to pay it forward and plant those seeds that she had in me in the lives of other people.
Beautiful. I never know how people are going to answer, and I'm always choked up when they do. All right, Rick, thank you for sharing that. Rick, tell us the best way they can find out more about his capital, about you, about anything that you guys are working on. If people want to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to find you?
Absolutely. I would say the best way to reach us right now is go to hiscapitalgroup.com. For those of you trying to figure out what strategies are available, we produce a lot of free content, because what we want to do is empower clients to understand the risks, the opportunities, and how they can work with us. We don't charge for the education. That's literally something we're giving back to you. So you can find it under free education. There's a portal. It's got modules. I mean, it's very exhaustive. Also there, you're going to find out more about our mission and our purpose. You're going to find out how we just recently came back from Ukraine, how you can be involved in helping us to continue to support the lives of those people that are suffering, and also projects like right now, Fort Myers. And so I think all in all, that's a great place to start. And if you go to click contact us and say that you are on the TED show, we'll definitely set up a one-on-one with you so we can have a conversation and try to guide you in any way possible.
I love it. What a blessing you are. What a blessing your whole company is, my friend. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you for all that you do. Thanks for coming on the show. You guys are always asking me for people that you can connect with. Tons and tons of people are getting in to the investment world and have absolutely no idea what they're doing. God bless them. So you want to find someone you can connect with, definitely reach out to Rick. Go to hiscapitalgroup.com. You can find him there. Or if for some reason you can't, I will get you in touch with Rick. God bless you, my friend. Thank you for all that you do in our world. You are a light, and I appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Seth. What a pleasure being here with you today. Thank you.
Such a pleasure. We did it. All right, guys. Hiscapitalgroup.com. Check it out.